There we go. Morning, my friends. Welcome aboard the Scenic Railway. My name's Sean. I'm driving this thing. We're going down into the Jamison Valley now. Please hold on nice and tight to all your valuables. Hold on to each other. Hold on to any kids that you'd like to keep. Enjoy the ride. See you at the bottom. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Living an Unlived Life. This is the 8th video in my Mindset Reset Challenge series, which came about when, in late 2024, I decided to radically change my life by making not one, but a whopping 52 New Year's resolutions. If this is the first time you've watched one of my videos, you can find the introduction to the series here. In this activity, I challenged myself to ride a horse again. Horses had been a large part of my life for over 30 years. Then, for various reasons, I'd sold my horses and stopped riding, but I desperately wanted to know if, at age 71, I was still capable of getting on a horse and going for a gallop. My horse riding challenge took a few weeks to research and plan. I had initially wanted to go on a 2-day trek in the snowy mountains, but to my dismay, it turned out that the company I had long thought of as being the best in the region, Rainella Rides, had closed. There were 2 other mountain horse ride businesses in the region, Cochrane Horse Treks at Yayak, which is north of Adaminaby, and Australian Saddle Safaris, which is in the same region, slightly to the west. However, unfortunately, both outfits only took rides of at least 3 days, which was more than I wanted to spend in terms of both time and money. My next choice was to ride somewhere in the Kanimbla Valley, which is to the west of Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, but the outfit that I'd remembered as being located there didn't take rides anymore. Finally, I found Centennial Glen Stables on Kanimbla Drive, which is just north of Kanimbla Valley, and I booked a 2-hour afternoon ride there. The shortest route from Canberra to the Centennial Glen Stables was via Turalga, according to Google Maps. However, because this route would be mostly on narrow rural roads, I decided to take the slightly longer route up the Hume Highway to the western outskirts of Sydney, then along the Great Western Highway to Blackheath in the Blue Mountains. The thought of this longer route didn't bother me, as I absolutely loved driving. I left Canberra at 5:30 a.m. on Thursday 27th of February 2025 with, at a minimum, a 4-hour drive ahead of me. There was thick summer fog that morning, most of the way from Canberra to Sydney, which turned the scenery into a fairyland of green and white. I was happy with this. Well, at least until the road out of Canberra merged with a much bigger freeway. I should at this point explain that Australia's infrastructure planners have failed abysmally for many decades in the provision of interstate freight transport. Being a seaboard-living nation, its arteries mostly run around the periphery of the country, but the link between Australia's 2 largest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, runs inland along the Hume Highway. The nation's capital, my hometown of Canberra, links to this lifeline via the Federal Highway. Australia does have a rail system, but in the serial absence of proactive governments, it hit its prime 50 years ago and has been neglected ever since, to the point of removal of lines in many rural places. The ultimate consequence of this neglect means that the vast bulk of small goods freight transport is by road, where the large trucks dominate to the point of intimidation of the cars for whom the road was originally built. I took a bio break in Goulburn and again at Pheasant's Nest. Good morning, everybody. I'm at a place called Pheasant's Nest. I've been driving for 2 hours in the fog, believe it or not, in the fog. I stopped to get a coffee. Ended up getting one from the Krispy Kreme shop, and crazy thing, they gave me a free donut. Look at this, free donut. I don't know how long since I've had a donut, a very long time. That will be yummy. By the time I got to the Blue Mountains, I'd been on the road for 4.5 hours. The road from Blackheath down Shipley Ridge was narrow and winding, with plenty of blind corners, though the verdant vegetation on either side was a pleasure to see. Kanimbla Road was even narrower and falling apart in places. It looked to have been that way for a while. Eventually the tar turned to dirt, and as the road got rougher, I was glad that I had an all-wheel drive Subaru with relatively high clearance. Looking up, I could see the high sandstone cliffs of the escarpment that the area is famous for. At the bottom of the cliffs, the road levelled out into a cleared valley, and I could see farmland and the Centennial Glen stables ahead, where I was welcomed by the owner, who told me that the young lady who was to be my ride leader was still out with another group, and to make myself comfortable for a while. The paddocks surrounding the stables were lush and green, and I was pleased to see that all of the horses were in excellent condition. There is nothing sadder than riding an underfed horse. With the previous ride back and my horse Charlotte saddled up, I mounted. Just sitting in the stable was pure joy. We headed out into the paddocks and up towards the base of the cliffs, then worked a clockwise loop around neighbouring land. I didn't get to gallop, I didn't even canter, not because I felt that I couldn't, but because it was a very hot day and I, like the horse beneath me, was feeling serene. It was so good to be back in the saddle. I'd like to think that I'd once again own a horse one day, but for the moment this was enough to remind me of the years of pleasure I'd had over the decades, and to know that it was still a possibility any time I chose. Sometimes in life you find yourself quite unexpectedly in a stunningly beautiful place, and you are infused with a completely peaceful Zen moment. While I expected to enjoy the horse riding, which was what I'd come to the Blue Mountains for, there was an enchanting place along Kanimbla Road that left me with a sort of intense connection with nature that makes my life totally worth living. I'd passed through this valley on the way to the stables, but hadn't had time to stop, so on the way back up, I paused for a while to look around and to breathe in deeply a timeless feeling of serenity. When I'd planned this trip, I'd only been to Katoomba once before, 20 years previously, so I decided to stay the night somewhere in the Blue Mountains area. This would give me time in the late afternoon and the next morning to play at being a tourist in my own country. Having not stayed in a hotel or motel for over 2 years, I decided to book a room with a view at the most exclusive hotel in the region, the Fairmont Resort, which is located at Sublime Point in Leura and is surrounded by a fantastic golf course. And yes, it was worth it. While I don't normally stay in 5-star hotels, far from it, I do believe in getting a good night's sleep when travelling, and this certainly was the place to do it. But after checking in, I quickly headed to the attraction that single-handedly made the Blue Mountains world famous a long time ago. Katoomba's unique geological formation, the Three Sisters, was discovered by the European explorers Blaxland, Wentworth and Lawson in 1813 while they were looking for new farming land for the new British settlement of Sydney. Then, because the Blue Mountains region is much cooler than Sydney, the whole area eventually became a summer playground for wealthy Sydney residents, with hotel properties such as the Hydro Majestic catering to their indulgent needs. Today the place is a mecca for school excursions and busloads of Asian tourists. Fortunately, the New South Wales Tourism Department has designed a series of paths and viewing platforms that help to disguise the sheer number of people in the area at any one time. In the late afternoon, the beauty of the sunset on the rocks of the Three Sisters compensated for the stinging heat of the summer sun and the jabbering crowds. We are either larks or owls. I'm definitely a lark, happily rising before dawn every morning. Friday 28th of February was no different, and despite having a wonderfully comfortable bed, I rose in the dark and drove the 10 kilometres from the Fairmont Resort Hotel back to the Three Sisters, hoping to be able to film some crowd-free drone shots of the cliffs around the Jamison Valley at dawn. But so had at least 100 other people, with photographers stationed at vantage points and a busload of school children dragged from their cheap motel beds by their weary teachers. Unable to use my drone, I took a few still photos and videos with my iPhone. Then, with the dawn show over, the crowds completely disappeared and I was left alone, able to fly my drone. Given that the Fairmont Resort was several kilometres away from the main street cafes of Leura, I'd opted to have breakfast there, so I backtracked to the hotel for a fantastic meal, also with a view. I spent over an hour indulging in at least 3 courses plus coffee and pastries while working on my laptop. While I'd originally planned to walk to Wentworth Falls on the morning of the second day, I'd done that on my previous trip, and so the night before I'd checked out other possibilities. From my previous visit, I knew that there was a cable car which went either across a valley or down into the valley, somewhere near the Three Sisters. The cable car turned out to be part of Scenic World, which now had 2 more, so I headed there straight after checking out of the hotel. Despite the crowds and the endless shopping opportunities, I had so much fun at Scenic World, first on the yellow cable car across the valley, then on the red train down into the valley, and, after a long walk around at the bottom, on the blue funicular train back up. Then, just for the pure joy of it, I took the red train back, down and up again.
Welcome back for a few of you. Hi there. My name's Sean. I'm driving this thing. We're going back up to Scenic World now, folks. We're going backwards as well, so good luck with that. There we go.
Oh my god! It's hard to hold on.
Oh yeah.
It's terrible.
Nice to be here.
Oh my god! With only one stop for food and a bio break, I had a quicker trip home. The total trip was 780 kilometres, and the petrol for that came to a total of $131.99. Road tolls cost about another $20. The fee for a 2-hour horse ride is normally $175 with a minimum of 2 people, but as I had opted to ride on my own, I paid $350. The hotel accommodation was $284.04, and this included the $34 buffet breakfast. A room service dinner cost $31.43, which included a $4 delivery fee. The entry fee for Scenic World was $52.20. Coffee and cake at Scenic World cost $11. A pie at Heather Bray's Pies on the way home was $8.95. In my next episode, I take on my 7th challenge in this series, learning how to use a 3D printer to make a much-needed plastic cover for each of my 2 drones. For more information about living your own unlived life, if you go to my website, you can download a copy of my free book, Living Your Unlived Life, Finding Contentment by Honouring Your Dreams. And if it's your thing, you could like this video and subscribe to my channel.